Let's see here. This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Matt.
My name's Matt, and I'm an alcoholic. You guys are a bunch of crazy motherfuckers. God, this is insane. I love it. This reminds me of the early days of Cocaine Anonymous, you know? All right. Let me give you some vital statistics. My sobriety date is February 21st, 1984. So tomorrow I'll have 24 and a half years. Anyways. And so that means today I'm 1 day short of that. It's 1 day at a time program, you know? Anyways, gosh, this is pretty awesome. Let me tell you why. I live out in Westlake Village now, and what exists out there in terms of AA is what a friend of mine liked to refer to as silk sheet sobriety. Okay, and you know, I mean, people who spilled a little too much wine, you know, while you know, cooking their whatever, you know, I don't know, and I say that lightly. I mean, there's real hardcore alcoholism where I live, but in terms of the meetings, this kind of insanity just doesn't exist. This kind of enthusiasm just doesn't exist too. And this is kind of what I got sober in, is this kind of people cheering and clapping and, you know, newcomers and, you know, and just the whole kind of raucous energy, which I got to tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable with because I've been out in Westlake Village now for about 6.5 years, and, you know, it's kind of what I'm used to, this kind of sedate, you know, congratulations, you know, and, you know, I don't know, whatever. It's good to be home. Right before I moved out there, I was secretary here on Tuesday nights, and you know, and I love the Marina Center. I've spent many hours here in meetings. I came to the 6:45 a.m. meeting probably about 3-4 days a week for about a 5 or 6 year stretch. You know, like I said, I was secretary of the Tuesday night here, and you know, there's a certain sense of home here at the Marina Center for me. Where to begin? I'm a real alcoholic, and I did all kinds of other stuff too. You know, I smoked a ton of pot. I got sober behind my cocaine addiction. That's what took me to my knees. And in the midst of all of that, from the starting point to when to the last time I got loaded, you know, there was all kinds of reds and whites and snorting cannabinol and smoking angel dust and you know, projectile vomiting slow gin, you know, which is really kind of a neat color, and pretty much you know, you name it. But I'll go way back just to kind of give you a little bit of a foundation. I think I was an alcoholic from the beginning. And there's a couple things that were a little bit of a telltale sign for me. Now, I don't remember this story because I was really young, but it's been told in my family many times over. I was a late talker. I literally didn't utter a word until I was about 3.5. And, you know, I would point, I would whine, I would cry, I would get my way in some way, shape, or form, but I really didn't speak until I was about 3.5. And as the story goes, the family there was some holiday family function taking place, and, you know, my parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents were all having cocktails, and apparently I kind of, you know, as a toddler waddled up to the coffee table or whatever it was and went to go take a sip off my grandfather's drink. And my mom said, you know, no, you know, don't let him drink. My dad's like, yeah, let the kid have a drink. So I took a few sips off the drink and started speaking in full sentences. right out of the box, you know. So, you know, right from the beginning, alcohol was the social lubricant I needed even in my own family setting, you know, where I should have felt most comfortable. You know, fast forward a few years, I'm from Illinois. I lived till I was 10 years old in this small little town in Illinois, and when I was about 7 years old, my parents decided to have a pool, you know, installed or whatever, put in our backyard. And the contractor that was installing the pool or building the pool in our backyard got the blueprints mixed up with the hotel in town, the Howard Johnsons in town, where their pool was getting installed. And so we had this humongous pool put in our backyard. And my dad bet my brother and I that if we could swim the length of this pool underwater, he'd reward us with a beer. And I remember very vividly, you know, being underwater, like really, you know, lungs bursting, you know, veins popping. I don't even recall specifically, did I make it to the other end or not? But I do remember my dad did reward both my brother and I with the beer. And it tasted good at age 7, you know, it was good. And then to fast forward a little bit further, consequently, I don't know because of that, but I grew up to be both an alcoholic and a competitive swimmer. So, you know, again, certain things were evident early on in my life. So when I was a teenager, we moved here. When I was about 13 and a half, we moved here to Venice. So I mostly grew up here in Venice, and I went to Venice High, went to Marina Junior High, and you know, in junior high, when I was in 9th grade, I was already fully in it. You know, I was drinking and using on a daily basis. I was sniffing chemicals out of rags. I was smoking as much pot as I could get, and I was drinking Old English 800 and doing whatever you do when you're 13, 14 years old. You know, whatever you can steal, whatever you can, you know, have older people buy for you, whatever. And I was hanging out with this kid, Jay, and he was a kind of a badass kid, and I kind of wanted to, I was this puny, scrawny, you know, frightened of my own shadow kind of kid, and so naturally I kind of gravitated towards hanging out with this badass kid because, you know, I don't know, I wanted to be like him, I guess. When we were 14, we were robbing apartments in the Marina so we could go buy, you know, get money to go buy pot for my older brother, and and hanging out in Venice at people's houses, and you know. I remember drinking myself into a blackout even then at that age, and so forth. And anyways, when I was in 9th grade, I remember pretty humiliating experiences being pulled out of 9th grade homeroom class to be taken to the principal's office, where I was then handcuffed by the Lenox Sheriff's Department and taken down and booked by the Lenox Sheriffs, you know, for robbing apartments. They had my fingerprints all over the place. I ended up not spending any time in juvie or CYA or whatever it's called now, but it was a real eye-opening experience for me. I was kind of this good kid, pretty bright kid, from the Midwest, you know, this skinny little white boy who, you know, was supposed to kind of get good grades and, you know, and have good social skills and so on and so forth, and I was just a fucking train wreck by the time I was 14. And I remember the summer, I'm getting to something with this, the summer between 9th grade and 10th grade, high school, was 1972, and that is the year that Mark Spitz won his 7 gold medals and broke the 7 world records and everything. And a kid that was a year older than me, when he got out of junior high, he was a bit of a train wreck, not as bad as I was, but when he went to high school, he joined the swim team. And so with him, and he cleaned up his life. And so I saw that as kind of a role model, and then Mark Spitz over the summer, you know, doing what he did in that year. I joined the swim team at Venice and ended up getting into athletics and, you know, on the swim team, and it was really good. I say to this day that swimming saved my life, you know, I mean, and I mean that. I've got a buddy of mine, Bill, who he and I were kind of on the same path, and he and I both agree. We're still, good friends today, this many years later. And we both say that swimming saved our life because it gave us a team to be a part of, and it gave us something to do, that was somewhat productive. Now, after every workout, usually before workout, but certainly after every workout, I'd go get loaded. And in my house, in my family house, it was okay for us to smoke pot and drink beer and stuff at home, because my parents' philosophy was it's illegal, and at that time, in the 70s, it was a felony, and it's illegal. Kid's already been busted. It's okay. Our parents said basically it's okay for the kids to smoke pot in the house rather than do it there, where we know it's safe, rather than out on the streets. So after swim meets, after swim workouts, sometimes before school, kids would show up at my house, come up to my bedroom, we'd have a few bong loads, and whatever, do our deal. So, but that alone wasn't enough, because even though it gave me some structure in my life, and it gave me a sense of belonging that I'd never had, it wasn't enough because I'm an alcoholic, and the disease of alcoholism is so much more powerful than any external physical force, and it was certainly way more powerful than my own willpower. So once I got out of high school and all of a sudden it was time to be an adult, I had absolutely no life skills at that point, and really kind of floundered for a number of years. I went from job to job, got fired. At one point, I just wanted to kind of escape, and this is when I was just before I turned 19. I bought a one-way ticket to Maui. I packed up my surfboard and went. I figured, I didn't know people there. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to support myself. I didn't know anything. I figured I'll just figure it out when I got there. And, I didn't know if I'd be there a week and a half or the rest of my life, So I ended up being there 2 years and got to experience pure LSD shipped in, straight in from Pakistan, and, the Maui buds and, all that. I lived literally, because I had no resources, I lived in a plywood shack, and I mean that literally, a plywood shack on the windward side of the island, on the side of the volcano, where when it rained outside, which it did a lot, it rained inside. And so I numbed myself, by drinking and getting loaded. But it was a good adventure too. I went surfing, and but behind a drunken blackout, totaled my car. I was a busboy at a restaurant there. And at the Christmas party, they had one of those, for employees, all you could eat, all you could drink, free, no problem. Well, I did that, drank myself into a blackout, drove all the way home, which was pretty far, and went, fuck it, there's free alcohol there. So I got back in my car. I grabbed my roommate first, got back in the car, went and drank myself into a deeper blackout, and driving home, totaled my car. Luckily, it didn't seriously injure anybody. In typical alcoholic, irresponsible form, instead of, filing insurance, I had no insurance, instead of seeing how much it might cost to get it repaired or anything, I just had my buddies help me the next day push the car into the cane field, and we just left it there, It might still be there. I was over on Maui, though, 2 years ago with my son. And as we were driving around, and we cruised all over the island, we saw every so often there were cars like pushed into the cane fields. I thought, how cool. Maybe I wasn't so unique, or maybe I started a trend. I don't know. Anyways, I came back here, when I was about 21, I guess it was, and continued drinking and getting loaded and trying to clean up my act. Here was the big challenge for me. I was kind of a periodic. I got loaded in some form, some light form, almost every day. But mostly my bad scene scenarios were binge scenarios where, you know, I would clean up my act for a while, maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. At one point, it was about a year and a half. But inevitably, I would take that first drink, and it would send me into an alcoholic spiral. And everything that I had, you know, built up for myself during those times where I pulled my shit together, I would tear down in a matter of days. In fact, this one time when I can't say I was completely sober for this year and a half time when I did it on my own, because I did drink a couple of times, one time alcoholically on 4th of July that I can remember very specifically, and I smoked pot a couple of times, nothing too out of control. But during that year and a half, I enrolled in school, in college, and I always wanted to be in broadcasting. So I you know, got into the broadcasting field in college and did really well. The professor loved me, you know, hired me on to work the broadcasting board, the night school, during night school, obviously. Got me an internship at a radio station, and I was doing really, really well. Life was good. I was living with this gal who was just the sweetest thing on earth. And one day, I thought I'd stop by my buddy Bob Morgan's house, who was an old roommate of mine and my old drug dealer. Thought I'd stop by and say hi, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And, you know, he said, hey, Matt, you want to do a little of this, you know? I was like, yeah, it's been about a year and a half. Yeah, I can probably, you know, whatever. I mean, I knew in the back of my mind, this is not a good idea. I knew when I was going over there, this is not a good idea. But I could not stop myself. I couldn't. I had no ability to stop myself on that particular day. And, and he said, you know, want to do a little of this? I said, yeah. Within a matter of 2 weeks, I had dropped out of college. I had started smoking cigarettes again. I was being completely irresponsible with all my commitments, you know, whether it was something as simple as you know, showing up for a family event, or, you know, I just started letting people down left and right, just like I did when I had stopped a year and a half earlier. So anyways, when I picked up that day, you know, I ended up circling the drain. The girl left me, and you know, I ended up, well, I'll tell you what it led to. I circled the drain for about 2 years before I came to the program and got sober. And what my life looked like when I got here, I was renting a room from a guy who had a house who was renting a house down in Venice, in one of the, you know, walk streets. And that was an upgrade from the couch, because when I started living there, I was on the sofa. I couldn't afford anything else, you know. So I was renting a room, and what my room looked like, there was a mattress on the floor. That's it. There was a dresser against the wall, and it had most of its drawers, but the top drawer somebody had borrowed at some point, you know, to maybe move stuff or something. I don't know, but it wasn't there. Sitting on top of the dresser, there was a TV, but it was one of those alcoholic TVs that has a coat hanger, you know, as an antenna, and you need vice grips to change the channel. I had a beat-up old 1972 Volkswagen Bug, you know, typical alcoholic car with every bumper and fender, you know, completely banged in. Anyways, what happened was, I mean, that's what, and an army blanket as the curtain, too. I should throw that in for good measure. My mom, who is an alcoholic as well, she just celebrated 25 years of sobriety. She got a DUI, and after a couple relapses, got sober. And I saw her going from a woman who I had absolutely no respect for. I mean, she was a fall-down, disgusting, drunk lady. She had gone from that to a woman I held in very high regard and respect in a matter of months. I mean, the turnaround was amazing. So when I was circling the drain, I went to her and said, you know, Mom, I've got a problem. Her first answer was, no shit. You know, probably no kidding, you know, is what she really said. But she wasn't, surprised at me coming to her. And she gave me the phone number of the guy at the alcohol council in Santa Monica that she had been sent to when she got her DUI. I gave that guy a call. I met with him, and I was 25 years old. He was probably what I am now. And he looked like an alcoholic. I mean, this guy, he looked like an alcoholic. And he read something to me out of the big book about the guy who stayed sober on his own willpower for 25 years and then drank and then was dead in 4 years. And he read this story. I was like, what? I'm sitting there in this guy's office. Smells like cigarettes. It's like, it's just disgusting. And anyways, I couldn't relate. And I said, you know what, I got a cocaine problem. I hear there's this new thing called Cocaine Anonymous. Now, I know this is an AA meeting, okay, so I'll just breeze through this part. But I said, I understand there's this new thing called Cocaine Anonymous. He says, yeah, I think I've heard of it. I'm not really sure. I said, well, do you have a directory or a phone number or something? And he asked his assistant, and she got a directory, which at the time was just one piece of paper, okay, with meetings on 1.5 sides kind of printed out, and a phone number. Well, I wasn't quite ready at that time, and so every time I would get loaded, I kept this directory in my pocket, and I'd bring it out, and I'd have it folded up, and so I'd unfold it, and then I'd fold it back up and put it in my pocket, and I'd unfold it. By the time I finally called the phone number and went to a meeting, I mean, this thing was falling apart, okay? I knew at some point and that was only about 1.5 months or so, okay? It wasn't a long time. But I looked at that directory many times. I called the phone number, I found out where the nearest meeting was, I went the next day, and, by God's grace and a certain amount of effort on my part, I stand before you clean and sober 24.5 years.
Easy ones.
Huh? Easy.
They're the easy ones.
Yeah, those are the easy ones. Yeah, it's when the challenge starts. It's kind of true. There's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. And you know what? Let me talk about that. I'm so fucking sick of AA meetings sometimes, and people, and people talking about their shit. Blah, 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 blah. Come on. Fucking man up, get happy, okay? Maybe it's the meetings I go to. Sorry, this is on tape, isn't it? So, anyways, yeah. But it is, AA has saved my life. It has provided me, I grew up in an atheist house, okay? Not agnostic, not like maybe God is, but there is no God. Atheist, there's no God. End of story, end of discussion. So when I come here, and you guys are, right out of the box talking about seeking a higher power, having dependence upon God, spirituality this and God that and all that, I'm like, fuck. I don't want to hear this. A 1.5 years earlier or whatever it was, the whole Jim Jones guy, I'm sure some of you don't know about this, but the whole Jim Jones drink the Kool-Aid Guyana mass suicide had just taken place. The whole cult awareness was really heightened at that time. I don't want to join some effing cult. Be drinking the Kool-Aid in 9 months from now, But my life is in the toilet. It doesn't resemble anything even remotely close to what I had envisioned for myself as a kid. I'm sleeping on a fucking mattress on the floor with an army blanket and a vice grips to change the channel. Getting fired from another job, after a series of getting fired from jobs, And so I need help, but you guys start talking about this shit that I don't want to hear about, And so, anyways, I do identify, in the first meeting, I identify with enough, just enough, to get me to another meeting. And that was enough. And I identified enough there and was willing enough and beaten down through my alcoholism just enough to get me to another meeting. And people welcomed me. And they weren't trying to sell anything or take anything from me. In fact, there's a guy named Kenny Lombini. I'm sure many of you know him. Kenny said to me at my very first meeting at the break, it was a meeting where there was a break. He says to me, are you new here? I said, yeah, this is my first meeting. And with as much love as he had for recovery and for me as the obviously scared, suffering, brand new, shaken little puppy that I was, he says to me, a couple things. He says, Matt, if you're serious about your recovery, I recommend a couple of things. One, I recommend you don't take anything, regardless of what your primary problem is. I recommend that you don't take anything that affects you from the neck up. No smoking pot, no pills, no alcohol, no cocaine, no this, no that, nothing. And he also said, if you're serious about your recovery, some people will tell you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. But if you're serious, I recommend you build a really good foundation and you go to a meeting a day for your first year of sobriety. It hit me like a ton of bricks, like, fuck, But I knew he was serious and he wasn't beating me over the head with it. I don't remember what he said specifically. He said, you don't have to do any of this. I would imagine he said something like that because I remember that being the sense that I got. That was the essence of the conversation. You don't have to do any of this. But if there's something here that you see and that you like and that you can identify with, here's what I'd recommend. This is what I've done. Now, bear in mind, here's a guy who was sober. He had just celebrated his first year of sobriety. So he wasn't sober a long time. I mean, it was a pretty long time for a real alcoholic, a year. Oh, and congratulations for 1 and 19, wherever 19 went. But he had just celebrated a year of sobriety, like 2 weeks earlier. And just about a week or two before that, he had witnessed, he was a skydiver. And his fiance was a skydiver as well, and a whole group of people. And they jumped out of a plane together, and her chute malfunctioned, and he watched her spiral to her death. Okay? This is a man who was just deeply in love with this woman. So he had every right and reason to be, mourning and having people hug him. What is he doing? He's reaching out to me. And I swear to God, I get choked up every time I tell that story because that man was instrumental in saving my life, in giving me a life that today does not resemble at all what it was 24 and a half and a day ago. Okay? Less than, whatever, yeah. My sobriety has not been pretty. I have been extremely active in the program pretty much from the beginning. I've gone to a lot of meetings, even sometimes when I fucking hate them. Richard told me it's okay to cuss a lot up here, so appreciate that. I want to I forgot to thank you for asking me to speak, so thank you. Anyways, I lost my train of thought. Hang on, yeah. I've done that sobriety thing. I got like 6 minutes. I'll say this and shut up. Don't you love it? When people say I'll say this and shut up, they got another 20 minutes to go, right? Either that or I don't want to tell much of my drunk-a-log, so, usually it's entirely a drunk-a-log pitch. Anyways, I have experienced, I guess what you could say, perfect recovery from alcoholism, because I have not taken a drug or a drink of any kind since the day I came here. And that just blows me away. I get on my knees at night and I say, thank you, God, for another day of sobriety. And I swear, when I do that, which I do almost daily, I want to say daily, but that'd be lying. When I do that, I get the same sense of gratitude that I got when I did it when I had 5 days of sobriety and 62 days of sobriety and a year and a half of sobriety. I get a sense of, oh my God, I can't believe I have made it another day clean and sober. How did that happen? You know? And again, my life today does not resemble at all what it was when I got here. Although I haven't done it pretty. I have had business success, and I've had business failure resulting in bankruptcy. I've been married and been, you know, the AA couple. And look at us. Okay, and we're both sober a long time, and look at our kid and all this. Divorce, you know? You know, and I've worked the steps, and I've sponsored a whole bunch of guys, and I've attended step workshops and facilitated step workshops, and I've been very actively involved in hospitals and institutions, H&I. I have secretaried meetings, I've spoke at meetings, I've sat as the passive observer and just attendant in the chair of meetings. And I've had greeting commitments, and I've had, kind of you name it commitments. I've had it. And so I can say that, I've been able to experience kind of a perfect sense of recovery from alcoholism. It's that life shit that gets in the way sometimes because I still don't get it sometimes, I got relationship stuff going on right now that just baffles me. It just baffles me. I look at my relationship life as an adult, and I look at my parents' relationship life, and it's like I'm living their fucking life, And I go, how is that happening? I'm in recovery a long-ass time, I need some therapy, man. But I still am in that same career that I had that I was getting fired from. I've tried a number of different careers, but I'm still in that. I've always gone back to that career that I was getting fired from when I got sober. And it's funny, a few years into my sobriety, the boss who was about to fire me called me up out of the blue and he says, man, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict and I really need help, and can you lend me some money? I said, I'll take you to a meeting. He didn't really want to hear that part. Gosh. I got a couple minutes. I came in as an agnostic. I was not an atheist like my dad. I always was of the mindset with respect to God and spirituality. I was of the mindset that I can't prove there is no God, but you can't prove there is. You'd say things like, look at the stars. Try to stop the waves. Go out and stand on a mountaintop and say to yourself, could this just be an accident? Oh, doesn't it have to be a creation of some kind of spirit of the universe? And they all, look in the eyes of my son, things like that. And my answer was, but it's not proof. Okay, all of that makes sense, but it's not proof. But I have been seeking from the very beginning. And my concept of a higher power and my ability to believe in and depend upon a higher power has evolved into something pretty substantial for me that when I look at myself today and who I am in relation to a belief in and dependence upon God, I am blown away, because I truly do today believe in, with a little tiny little bit of doubt, but believe in and depend upon a power greater than myself. How that evolved is people said, you know what, Matt, just act as if. Again, if you're serious about your recovery, just act as if. So, like I said, I grew up surfing, and the ocean was, in the literal sense of the word, a power greater than myself. I could not stop the waves. Did it have control over my serenity and my ability to drink or not drink or any of that? I don't know. But it was literally a power greater than myself. So what I would do is I would go into my bedroom with the army blanket curtain and the mattress on the floor, with my surfboard in the corner, and I'd lock my bedroom door because my roommate might walk in on me, and that'd be pretty embarrassing. But I'd kneel in front of my surfboard, and I'd say, out loud, surfboard, please relieve me of the obsession to drink and use for today. And that's not bullshit. I actually did that for about the first 6 weeks of my sobriety, okay? And I would do that today, too, if I needed to, you know? But that was the starting point for me, just acting as if. And somehow, some way, I'd get up off the floor, and I'd feel some kind of shift inside of myself, like maybe I don't need to get loaded. And that has evolved. And I worked the steps again. I've worked the steps total of probably about 6 times from start to finish, 1 through 12. And I worked them about 5 years ago. And the guy that took me through the steps had me do some really in-depth writing about my behavior, whether sober or drunk. I got you, Richard. And what I discovered is that when I wrap my arms around my life and I manage my life, it's a train wreck, whether it's relationships or business matters or whatever. Kind of you name it. When I hang on tight and when I operate from self-will, it's a disaster. And I looked at that, and then I read that paragraph, which I had read probably hundreds of times, where it says, you know, either God is everything or he is nothing. Either he is or he isn't. What is your choice to be? What I realized this last time, 5 years ago, is that I can make a choice. Kind of like a jury looking at the evidence of a court case. They might not feel like the person is guilty, but if the evidence says they are, they gotta vote guilty. And it was kind of that way for me. The evidence presented to me by myself and my own writing and my own self-reflection, it was obvious that my will made my life a disaster. So I could choose to believe in and depend upon God, whether I felt it or not. See, here's where the rub was for me. I always thought I had to feel it. I always thought I had to be fucking levitating to be spiritual. And I realize I don't. I can just make a choice based on the logic presented. And given that choice, it is obvious that it is better for me and my life and those connected to my life, it is better for me to choose God. It took me a long time to get there, and I acted as if. And sometimes today I act as if, but it seems to work somehow, some way. And I gotta tell you, Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, has saved my life. Even when I don't want to be in meetings and don't want to work the steps, it still saves my life one day at a time because I am a real alcoholic. And that's just undeniable. I want to welcome the new people, congratulate the CHIP people, and thanks for letting me share.